wrote a couple of things, and then we'll just kind of go into kind of a roundtable from there. So obviously the topic tonight is fundamentals of land surveying. And so over the course of 102 mentoring Mondays and the last like 14 wisdom Wednesdays, the conversation always revolves around, as long as they know the fundamentals, they're good. But what are those fundamentals? So that's always I'm like, what are we talking about? What do they got to learn? What do they got to know? And then hitting some of these career fairs too, kind of a sidebar conversation I'd like to maybe talk about at the end. Hitting some of these career fairs is some of the teachers and students asking what do they need to learn? What should they be learning in high school to kind of start as an internship or job shadowing? So a couple of things that I just kind of went through, wrote down really quick. Surveying is a critical profession that has been essential to the planning and development of the world for centuries. However, the challenges faced by surveyors have changed over the time and continue to evolve as new technologies and techniques are developed. Some of the past challenges, surveying was more of a manual and time-consuming process. Surveyors used just basic tools, rods and chains and transits to measure the land, and calculations were made by hand. The accuracy of these measurements were limited by the availability of the technology, and as we've seen through many court cases, mistakes were common. In addition, surveyors had to work in difficult and often hazardous conditions. And most of the part of the country that still kind of happens. I mean, we're definitely spoiled in the West or maybe the Southwest. I know, Florida dealing with swamplands or any of that kind of stuff, or Alaska and Canada having to deal with some pretty serious conditions. But the accessibility to come and go from the projects has been made things a little easier, where we necessarily don't have to camp on a site overnight anymore. Current challenges today, advances in technology have made surveying profession much more efficient and accurate. However, surveyors face new challenges, including data management, ensuring that the accuracy of the data from multiple sources. In addition, increasing demand for faster and accurate results has put pressure on the surveyors to keep up with the latest technology. Future challenges. In the future, surveying is expected to face even more challenges and new technology as the drones and 3D scanners continue to develop. Surveyors will need to be familiar with these new tools and techniques and be able to use them efficiently to provide more accurate data. And then kind of just a conclusion rolling into that. Even though surveying has come a long way since its origin, we will still continue to evolve in response to the changing needs and demand of society. With increasing demand for accurate and precise mapping, the use of UAVs, laser scanning, and modern tools and techniques will become more prevalent. In addition to the increasing demand for suitable infrastructure, urban planning will drive a need for more accurate and up-to-date data on the land use topography. The use of virtual and augmented reality in the industry will also be an area of growth and expansion. However, land surveyors will need to adapt to these changes and continually update their skills to remain competitive, and will continue to play a crucial role in shaping the world we live in. And so all of that kind of goes back to what in the world are the fundamentals. And so I just grabbed the fundamentals from the FE exam and from kind of the syllabus and that. And so if you just kind of run through, I'll just go hit the main ones and then we can kind of roll into it. But survey processes and methods. And under that is instrumentation, levels, total stations, robotics, scanners, UAVs. B is GNSS, GPS, which includes static, kinematic, OPUS, and real-time networks. C is control surveys, horizontal, vertical, and network design accuracy standards. D, cadastral, public PLSS, boundary, meets and bounds, and land title. E, topographic surveys. F, construction surveys, layout and as-built in quantities. G, land development, which is subdivision design, platting, land use, environmental, floodplains, and wetlands. And then H, field record keeping and documentation. Let me just, I'll, rather than read each one of those, the next one would be, the next main one would be mapping processes and methods, boundary law and real property principles, surveying principles, survey computations and computer applications, business concepts, round out the last of that little piece. So kind of, I guess, going back to the roundtable theme, like what, I guess, of those under the NCES FE exam, I mean, those pretty much round out the fundamentals of what surveying is, but that's always what, like, goes back to my original question. What are the fundamentals that we should be teaching? And as things change, what should we be teaching? And who wants to chime in?
What's the like when you're watching these Wisdom Wednesdays and Mentoring Mondays, what are they talking about that brings up fundamentals? Do you remember,
it's
like
always,
an example?
yeah, no, it's always just, you know, when we talk about it, it is as long as they know the fundamentals, we're good, right? And that's usually just a broad 30,000 foot overview. So, right, and so it circles back to what are the fundamentals, and so
Probably like depending what state you're in, you know, public land for us, knowing that system. I know at Fresno State we had a public lands class, so that was really helpful. Once you graduated college, which I didn't, but it was helpful for me to understand surveying contents. I think that's like a big one. It's just understanding township range and all that. And then as you get into your career, understanding about research and APNs and how to read APN maps. You know, I found some useful information like book and page from a survey technician perspective.
anybody else? Jen, obviously you're going to school right now. What's I guess what's some of maybe your conversations on the fundamentals? If you're able to unmute and chat. You're unmuted, but gotta fix a mic. We'll come back. Go for
Besides
it.
that, there's
Yeah.
I think my perspective is with the technology now, it's people just not knowing COGO, not knowing how to establish control network because they turn their GPS on, hit VRS and set a control point where you can hit a cul-de-sac and have 17 damn PK nails in it because they've just we've created them to be more button pusher and concentrate on the data collector, not realize that basic COGO, pulling the tape out, pulling diagonals, little stupid things that don't take a lot of time are the sanity check on the magical box that if you fat fingered something into it, it's giving you an answer, but
Right.
it's not an answer.
Yeah.
so that stems from mentoring though, right?
Oh yeah, and that's the bigger push is not promoting the one-man crew mentality 100% in a firm.
Yep.
Have some sort of an on with me. I've always put new people with myself or a couple of the senior crew chiefs, and they spent 2-3 months with us because my methodology is based off 30 years of slinging wood versus other crew chiefs with 10-11 years experience. They have a different mentality and a different methodology.
Mhm.
And it's letting them try to learn from them before we kick them in the butt because we have VRS and magical robots and scanners that you don't really need to know what you're shooting because you're just going to pick up 5 million points and it's okay.
That's like the benefit of going to school and get education in surveying because they teach you like the theory and the understanding behind it. And then once you get in the real world, then you're have a degree, but doesn't mean you know everything about
Yeah.
surveying, but you understand more the reason why.
Yeah,
And
you
not
have a
just,
good foundation at that point.
yeah. So that's where it comes back to
Yeah.
mentoring and processes.
Yeah.
Like you said, survey control networks, understanding what you're supposed to do in the field, but the getting the help from the bosses, taking the
Yeah.
time to teach
Yeah.
people. Because I know when I was in the field, it was trial by fire. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
burned my feet a lot.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's still that way. And sometimes putting those, like Josh says, right, putting the stronger ones with the younger ones, right, and giving them that long-term foundation. So
Yeah, I probably still get 6 or 7 phone calls from people I trained in the mid 90s and to date on just what I consider basic survey, but it's stuff that with technology, they don't really have an opportunity to do it more regularly. And it's tough. It's not like we have remedial jobs that we can send people to that have that big cookie jar budget,
right, exactly.
but it's getting the people comfortable that they can call people and they can ask questions. And I think us gray people learning a little bit of tolerance that you might get asked the same question twice.
Or 10 times, and that's the
Or
thing. It doesn't matter how many times, right? It's just,
as I tell my guys,
it's the
I
patient.
want you to screw up every day, but please screw up a new way every day.
Yeah, yeah.
If I've taken the time to go over it with you without drawing blood, don't make me go over it again tomorrow.
You're right.
Screw up a new brilliant way and I'll respect you more because you're trying. Because I can teach you if you want to learn. I can't teach you if you want a paycheck.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So Trent, this is Carrie. I just wanted to
Yep.
throw something out there because
Okay.
just from listening to everybody right now, um, the NCES, the FS is so book oriented,
Yes.
and you really just want to. It's really hard to just come out of the field and do the book
Yes.
part and not the field part, the real world stuff. And so I think it's trying to get the students past the book part. And then once they pass, it's like, okay, forget everything you learned and we're going to teach you now, kind of thing, and that's what, to me, I mean, the test don't even make sense. It shouldn't even be like that. It should be real world stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, I've been in this field since '89 and I finally got talked into taking my test, and that FS test, I passed LS. That's the FS one.
Yeah.
So is what's hard. So I don't know, when you say fundamentals, I don't know, you might have to distinct between the book and the field, the real world. When you're talking about the FS, which one are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right. I would say, oh, there's Dave. Overall, right? Just the kind of the general profession fundamentals, I guess. And that's kind of not so much just NCES fundamentals, but the overall profession fundamentals. And so I think that's kind of, where it stems from. Kind of a couple more that I wrote. Let's see.
The fundamentals also come from like your mentor. Like sounds like Joshua, he's a pretty good mentor and people come back, but not everybody has that. Like I've learned little bits and pieces from people, but I don't have a mentor. So it's more of a struggle. And I think more people are in my boat than they are benefiting from a mentor. And then they struggle, but they don't know who to reach out to because, everybody's siloed. They're not really out there on social media, having mentoring Mondays. So they're kind of on their own until they find someone.
Exactly. I know, that's kind of what Monday's going to be about as well. You guys know Nick Slosher, he's trying to create a little mentee program down in Arizona as well, but
Yeah.
and then kind of start a platform for it. So, whoops, there's a couple more people. Let me.
Yeah, that's
So we're going to kind of have that conversation on Monday about mentor-mentee programs as well. So that'll be another conversation. But
Hey, can you
That's
hear
why,
me?
yeah, we
Yeah.
got you now, Jen.
Okay. So I've been studying for FS a little bit, and like all the study materials, practice tests, I find that they have a lot of like field related stuff in there, and that's where I'm struggling. So it's kind of the opposite problem, I guess. Because now I've done all my classes, and but I'm not working yet. So because one thing and another, but yeah. So I keep running up against things like, what do you do, or what should you do in this situation, or what is this part of this instrument for? I'm like, well, okay, I had my hands on one of those like 2 years ago.
Yeah, in lab 1 of, of semester 1. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's enough of that in at least in the practice materials to make me nervous.
That's awesome.
Definitely an important part.
Yeah.
And then, obviously the public land system isn't real big in Massachusetts, so I haven't had to learn that, but kind of parallel concept. I think knowing how to search the registry and, understand what to do with a meets and bounds description is really fundamental too. I think that frees you up once you have an idea of how to get it into a map. Maybe like I'm coming from conservation, so I've been reading descriptions and making maps and going out with just like a trail GPS, finding corners, and I think that's given me a good foundation. So like for all the theoretical stuff, so even though I'm not like working surveying yet, like I can picture how it's going to go. And I understand a lot of the legal concepts and all of that just from other work. So I think that helps a lot to have that kind of just being on the ground and seeing it and have that like physical presence of what's going on.
So yeah, no, that makes sense. I wrote down a couple other like main fundamentals that I kind of come up with outside of the NCES. And so measurement and mapping of physical features of the land, right? Determining property boundaries, using mathematical calculations and spatial technology to analyze and interpret the data, understanding and interpreting legal descriptions and maps, knowledge of local regulations related to land use and development, communication and collaboration with other professionals. And the last one would be ethics, right? We always have to end with ethics.
Oh yeah.
So those are the 7 basically that I come up with, kind of going through a lot of different things. Like I said, there's not a clear cut fundamentals. There's not a clear cut book that talks about the fundamentals. So it's one of those things like that was again what this conversation is about. What are those fundamentals? And so those are the 7 that I come up with. And so somebody wants to maybe add to that, or think we should do anything with those. And then I kind of went through each one of those and I just kind of come up with a couple of bullet point items for 5 or 6 bullet point items for each one of those 7 items as well. But
yeah, I wanted to kind of take this into like where the academic space is.
Yeah.
Because whenever we hear fundamentals, it's kind of like the term is hijacked by NCWS.
Right.
And you don't realize that, there's so much more to it. So currently I'm teaching engineering students, civil engineering students, surveying at Ohio State. And our whole course is built on like the core techniques of surveying in the field. So we have a lecture, they teach them everything they need to know about had they entered the survey minor to get their survey, to be qualified to take the survey exams. But when I teach the lab sessions, I teach them leveling, I teach them resectioning, I teach them traversing, stakeouts, topos, trigonometric leveling. So all the things that you would do in the field on a base level, you know, and nowadays we have robotic total stations, so you don't have to sit there and do a traverse yourself. You know, the total station can do it on its own now. But when you teach them that kind of stuff, that's fundamental work. And you know, Jen, you had mentioned that maybe you haven't had as much hands-on because you just haven't worked because you've been in school. That also can tie into what they do in internships. So when I was in school, you know, I did the internship, you know, where I worked at a survey company and I did stakeouts all summer. And all I knew how to do was pound stakes into the ground. Sure, I knew how to do cut and fill. I knew, you know, how to lay a building out. But then the second year, I went and did an internship with a drone company. They literally did aerial mapping, and they knew nothing about how to set control with, you know, with a GNSS receiver.
Yeah.
I ended up introducing them to that because I learned it in school. So they gave me the platform to learn how to do that, and then that's kind of what built my career into the geospatial world. I broke my dad's heart by not working in Boundary and doing altas with him, and now I work in geospatial mainly. But it built a kind of foundation that I had, and then I branched off and did what I want with it. You're going to find a lot of people end up doing that just because the fundamentals, you know, it's not just what NCWS says it is. They literally, like I say, they've hijacked the term and made it seem like this is all surveying, and it's not really just that. You know, you get into like the research phases of surveying, which is what I'm doing now, and there's like technology that isn't even in the public yet that we're researching for surveying, and you start to talk to some older folks about it, and it just doesn't click because there's a huge disconnect between reality and what's coming. Like I'm very active on social media about using iPhones, and there are surveyors that go to the state and they're trying to prosecute people that use iPhones to survey, whereas I'm advocating for it. Like there's a big disconnect, and you know, you need to know what you're doing, obviously, but the technology is going to continue to advance in ways that we can't imagine if we don't catch up.
Yeah, not adapt, right? That's the surveyors have been prone to not adapt fast enough, and so
Yeah.
And we're kind of in that situation now, right? Where the drones and scanners are all of the BIM layout, all of the stuff inside a lot of these, you know, high-rise towers are being done by BIM layout guys, and so we're already behind the ball on some of that stuff. But
oh yeah, and the thing is, if we don't take control of it, someone else will. Someone that's less qualified, someone that has less experience with accuracy and with control and with standards. And then when we try to rebound, you know, like we did with GIS, after geographers took it over, there's nothing we can do about it. Now GIS has grown and blossomed into the geography space, and surveyors don't have the same influence they could have had we taken control of it 5 or 6 years ago when it first came out.
Yeah, 20. I mean, I remember the conversation.
Longer, actually.
25 years ago. Yeah. They're like, you measure within 3 feet. We want nothing to do with you. Of course, look at where GIS has come now, right? There's everything's tighter than 3 foot on GIS world at this point to some degree, but yeah, it's crazy. So good points, Rami. Love it.
Yeah, the funny thing I did this year with our state society is I started a committee with our state ERISA group, and walked into one of their meetings with 300 people, and we can, if we're lucky, we can get 10 people in a meeting.
Right.
And they steadily have 300. And the more I sat down and talked with them, I think they were really supportive of surveyors getting more involved with them because they want their base maps to be accurate. With Esri now, with Parcel Fabric and all this technology, they want us to be recording surveys. They want us to help them out and make stuff correct. But
they see our value,
hiding and shaking that they're trying to take over the world. We definitely missed the boat.
Yeah, like Robin says,
they have missed that boat, but there's technology out there, and there's so many more workflows out there. I mean, we may have missed it on one. We should just learn from that. We shouldn't repeat the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Yep. But it, you
They're,
know, you definitely see it happening though, with, like I said,
so
with scanners and drones. So,
Yeah.
even the whole GIS culture is different than surveying. Like if you follow Eurissa, I check out like every state has a chapter.
Yep.
They have Young Professionals Network. They've been doing it, you know. They've been cultivating the culture for so long, and they have ways to have GIS day and, you know, reach out to the schools. So that's where we're falling behind is social media, networking, putting our name out there. You know, there's a lot that we need to do to promote land surveying, and we could take some notes from them, but it's a it's a it's an uphill battle.
Oh, yeah.
it's a 10-year plan, as I keep saying. It's a
Yes.
10-year
Oh,
plan.
yeah.
At
But as
least-
far as go ahead.
I said at least a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as far as fundamentals, I know from schooling it's like, you know, public lands, GPS, understanding how GPS systems work. What I haven't used it and I didn't really get taught it, so I don't know, you know, the intricacies of PDOP and satellites and all that, and but I know that would be a fundamental, just because, you know, oh, I have a GPS or GNS equipment, it says I'm 100 with 100, I'm good, you know.
Yeah.
But if you don't explain to whoever's using it, that's part of the mentoring, especially from people that have been around like you folks that were trained in a different way, you know. You have to use that training and then pass it on to the new people, which is what the people that are here are doing, because, you know, these are the people that are involved in the conversations, and it's trying to get more people in the conversation to teach others. That's the harder part about it all.
One of the things when you talked about GPS, one of the main fundamentals from the very beginning was multipath, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
where you're at in relation to buildings and, you know, signs and all these other things, right? Like, I mean, you see all the pictures on social media now, it's just, there's oblivious to multipath,
Yeah.
right? It just, the technology doesn't exist anymore that it creates it.
Yep.
So. What, anybody else? How about Mr. Woolley? I know you're hiding behind your Mac, but your mic, but thoughts on, I know you're a big proponent of fundamentals and that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on the current things that we should be teaching?
I think what people are saying is good. I think what Rami was saying is right, is how we use this technology, because you know, land surveying is the second oldest profession, and that doesn't change because we're fortunate in that the courts have determined how property boundaries are. And so regardless of the technology and the ability to measure, we have case law that covers how we do our business. So we need to know that that's where we're anchored, and the technology, how it helps us get there. Because that's the core fundamental of a land surveyor that separates every land surveyor from an architect or an engineer or any other GIS professional. And so we need to know that that's where our roots are, and they're in writing legal descriptions, understanding land tenure system, the classic land tenure system, then the technology, how it fits into that, because they were measuring these principles were the same in 1930 when they were using a chain as they are today when we're using GNSS tilting GPS. That's the fundamental of what a land surveyor is. There's not enough of that work or enough expertise to support the community as a whole. And so I think what we need to do is we need to integrate that knowledge and back into the GIS community, because my experience is somebody was explaining with Urissa. I went to the conference this year in Boise, and they're very open. It was, there was only a handful of surveyors there. And they're very sophisticated as a whole. They're usually well educated. You'll run into, bachelor's, masters, and PhDs, real common, and they're actually really welcoming to the survey community. They understand what we do. I think we have this inferiority complex within our community that, we don't think we mix and match well. We kind of take pride in our isolationist ways and things like that. And it's unfortunate, and it's not actually true. I just think that we've been in the back room of a big engineering house for a number of years, and we haven't had maybe a seat at the table. We haven't demanded a seat at the table. We're willing to take whatever they hand us and be satisfied with it. And that community, speaking specifically about the Urissa community, they very much value what we can contribute, but they can't chase us down. We refuse to be participants.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about fundamentals, you say a fundamental really is error analysis, capturing, tracking, and understanding error analysis, because that's not what they understand, even though they have, lots of education in statistics and things like this. They don't understand the integration of a GPS unit, the error analysis into the parcel fabric. And they would be more than happy to hand that off to us. They really would. They're not competing with us. They just can't get us to participate.
Right.
So the fundamentals are, and I'm finding this where I'm moving myself personally and my company, is we're moving deep into underground and what they call the SU market, subsurface utility engineering, because that's in its infancy right now, where GIS was in 1996.
Yeah.
And it's a huge market. There's a tremendous amount of expertise being called for. And that's for the surveyors that want to get paid to measure. That's the future, because you're not going to get paid, in my opinion, to do construction staking, because they're going to self-perform. They buy the same equipment from the same vendors. And I would argue that most contractors that are educated equipment are actually better at it. Than the reason is because they know how to build it.
Yeah.
Where we don't know anything about rebar placement as a whole. We don't know anything about six-sack concrete. My generation does, because we were part of the building team at that point. Today, it's just coordinates on a stick, two stakes in the ground with whatever they told me to write on it, and I walk away.
Exactly.
And so that's okay. But I think that's fundamentals, is that understanding how the technology works and the application across professions, across trade.
Great points. You talk about the construction side. Yeah, exactly. Rami's giving you claps. We were at a recent board meeting up in Reno in Nevada, and there's a few firms in Reno who are basically pouring their own concrete with almost like basically a real life 3D printer, right? They're running it with machine control and pouring their own curb and gutter on site. So, like you say, that's kind of the first step to them taking over some of that stuff. And it's not considered a fixed works, at least from Nevada standpoint. It's all of ours is based on fixed works type stuff. So, in theory, they can lay it out. It comes down to the as-built, right? And when they got to do the as-built on the plans and that kind of stuff, but making sure it's right. But so like David said, sometimes they're better knowing that stuff than the guys in the field who are just staking out point number 121, right? So it with an elevation of 96. So good points. I love that. Yeah, the good points on the fundamentals there too. And I did kind of go through, and I wrote a bunch more, and I can share my document when we're done. I'll kind of go through and clean it up. But each one of those 7 fundamentals that I talk about, I kind of went through and added bullet points to each one of them. But I'll share that when we're done, and we can kind of fine tune some of that. But
I have one more thing, Trent.
Yeah,
I'd
of
like
course.
to. Okay,
Yeah, please.
so where I'm and where I think it is the surveyors are going to move more into a management role. We're going to manage trades. Like, I'm going to show a carpenter how to lay out whatever that carpenter needs done that day. I'll come in and I'll maybe set some primary control brass disc with good XYZ. And the carpenter will say, okay, we're going to move to the other side of the job site today. And I'll say, okay, let me get you some control over there. And it's going to function more like the surveyor is going to be kind of a hybrid between a construction manager and a resident engineer, to where you're there to really supervise and make sure they stay in their lane. And you're going to be support staff. I don't think surveyors are going to make their money on labor, because our numbers are dwindling, but I don't think, and we need to get that up, but I think the licensed surveyor is not going to make money on labor. It's not going to be, when you meet a surveyor, the common thing is how many crews are you running? And that's some measure of your success. And I think it's going to be, how many jobs are you supervising? And how many contractors are you supervising? And I really think it's going that way, but that's just me. I'd be interested in anybody else sees or thinks about that.
100%, 100%. You're not going to believe the kind of client I had. I had a client that did party venues. He would like do outdoor festivals, and he called me and he said, hey, I want your help to lay out where to put the booths for people to sell food, where we're going to put the stage, where we're going to put, porta potties. Like, help me lay this out. Like, this is not even like real construction in my eyes, but this is someone that needed a surveyor to help lay out where they're going to put everything, because they needed to be in an exact location. And then when they would move to a different city, it needed to replicate the exact same position. So I consulted him and I showed him basically what he needed to do using GNSS to find those positions. So yeah, we're going to turn into consultants. Like, our knowledge is going to be so valuable to other people that they're going to ask us, please just show me what you know. We don't need you to do the work. We'll do it ourselves. We just need your knowledge. And our knowledge is very expensive. Like, we're not going to sell ourselves cheap. And that's how we will make our money in the future.
Interesting. Yeah. And so in that theory, do you guys think that parcel fabric, that GIS fabric, is going to get so close that people are locating their boundaries via iPhones and smart devices, right? That's kind of the joke, right? The boundaries don't find themselves. And so at what point will it become so good, whether it's 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years from now? But
Trent, they make RTK receivers for iPhones. Like, you can buy one for $6,000 from Pix4D, attach it to your phone, and it'll give you centimeter accuracy on your iPhone.
Okay. And the parcel fabric, I think if all the states had mandatory recording, all this different things, would be super beneficial and helpful, because they can have their tax map that was rubber sheeted and bring the surveys in and adjust all your property and all the adjoiners based off the survey, and just essentially build the neighborhood, build the cities to where unfortunately, I think, back to your question, it goes in the direction of people are going to do their own survey work, essentially. But we built it for them in a way.
Through those mandatory recording requirements and stuff. Yeah.
I mean, it's really neat technology. It's pretty cool. I do so much right-of-way mapping for utilities, like with AGL in Georgia, where they want me to take all of their paper records and put them in GIS. So they actually don't have to go through all these boxes and all these archive files. They have a 50-foot right-of-way shown on the GIS base map. And I grade them A, B, C, or D, to where D is, you think you have 50 feet, and I would assume it's here because all the adjoiners were easy to build, or weird things, but that seems to be the direction. I mean, surprisingly, this year I'm getting more work doing 3D scanning for Netflix, Amazon, scanning buildings and facades and stuff for them to use in their movies.
Right. Right.
which I would have never, I still am flabbergasted with that.
Dave's got his hand up. Go for it, Dave. How about now? Try it now, Dave.
Okay, can you hear me now?
You're good
Yeah.
now.
Okay. I see it a little bit differently. I think boundary will stay within the land surveyor's realm. I
Yeah.
think you'll have good measurements and things, but again, it goes back to the court cases and monuments holding over maps. And you can GIS and you can GPS, but it's still not going to get you where you're going,
Yeah.
particularly when you have to start to defend these boundaries.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll go with, if you go to like Africa or areas where they have developing nations and they set up a true cadastre where the coordinates control the boundaries, yeah, certainly that'll work there.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't see that in the West American land tenure system.
No, I think my comment was, I don't think we would be replaced from the boundary and the legal side of it. I think we'd be replaced from the simple fact that we don't sell ourselves and they can log in and type their address in and print out a map and assume they don't need to call us.
I think they do that now.
Oh yeah. Oh, they definitely do.
Two neighbors say, hey, I want to build a fence. It's going to cost $5,000. Let's split the cost. Let's call surveyor. Surveyor says it's going to cost you $10,000.
Yeah.
They say, why don't we just build the fence and see
Yeah.
how it goes?
Yeah.
True point. Go for it, Jen. You got your hand up.
Oh, I think it would be a really long time before you could have like a general shoot, now I've lost the word, parcel network, whatever, for around here. There's like, we have assessors, all the assessors have their data online, so you can see an assessor's map, and that has all the parcels more or less. And some towns will, when they get a new survey in or for a subdivision, will actually do a good job putting that into their GIS, but then they still snap everything else around it to those corners, and position isn't necessarily very good. Sometimes they'll go, oh, well, everything else is right, but this corner doesn't fit, and they move that one, even though that was on the survey. And but even so, there's so much. If you just go from descriptions, there's so much overlapping and gaps and non-closing shapes. And got everything that was like went up a mountain with chain, that just isn't going to draw out right.
No.
Just I think it would take a very, very long time to do that here, to have good enough descriptions on like every parcel to have something accurate here. Yeah, it'd be crazy actually.
Yeah. Can imagine. Let's see. On the kind of the measurement fundamentals, so we kind of hit on them a little bit. Using surveying instruments, total station, GPS receivers, levels to accurately measure and locate points on the Earth's surface, creating maps, profiles, cross sections to accurately depict the topographic features of the property, understanding and using coordinate systems to locate map and features, perform fieldwork to collect data, taking measurements, making observations, recording the data in field books. That's the field books is a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah.
Especially if you follow social media. Analyzing, interpolating data to create accurate representations of the physical features, utilizing geospatial technologies to store, analyze, and display the data, and keeping records and documentation of all measurements, observations back to the field notes. So those were kind of under the measurement sides of the first fundamental that I wrote down. Number 2 was determining boundaries, property boundaries. Again, kind of goes understanding, interpreting land descriptions, including deeds, plats, and maps, conducting research to identify and verify the location, property corners and lines using historical records and fieldwork, locating and marking property corners and lines using survey techniques, performing boundary analysis to determine exact location of property lines, keeping records of all measurements, understanding and applying local regulations related to boundary, which goes back to Wooly's point about case law, which we kind of hit on that first paragraph. Communicating with clients, attorneys, and other professionals to resolve boundary disputes, provide expert witness testimony. And the last one, keep up to date with the advances in survey technologies and techniques, as well as the changes in laws and regulations, which is definitely by every legislative session. There's something new that gets in adopted. So those are the first couple. Number 3, mathematical calculations, geospatial technology, basic knowledge, trigonometry and geometry, as well as their application in surveying and mapping, understanding and applying mathematical formulas and algorithms to analyze data and make accurate calculations, utilizing geospatial technology, CAD, to manipulate and display the data, interpreting and visualizing data using CAD, maps, profiles, cross sections, using geospatial software and tools to analyze the data for calculating areas, slopes, and volumes, communicating results and analyze the calculations with clearly and effectively with clients, colleagues, and other professionals, and validation of data collected and ensuring its accuracy. That's a big one right there.
I have a super basic one.
Yeah.
Adjusting your tribrax and prism poles.
Yeah. Exactly.
Looking at the tips on your prism poles and realize it's rounded, that it's not 2 meters anymore.
Yeah.
But you're laying out bolts and saying you're doing it to a certain spec.
Right.
I mean, true basics of, you just can't throw it in the back of the truck and it's gonna be perfect every time.
Yeah, exactly. Equipment care, right? That's one we're missing off the fundamentals right
Yeah.
there. Yep. So we kind of need almost a field, the kind of the field care side of
Yeah.
things. I will find, let me throw some of that in there.
I did
You
that
definitely
at-
don't get much of that
No,
in online school.
no, you
Yeah,
won't.
exactly.
In any of the programs, we did it 10 years ago in Georgia when I was my first foray of being active with the society before they turned into the mafia. On our technical seminars, I had them open. I go, we call it a technical seminar. Why don't we do a Saturday class and invite the technicians to learn,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to having it as let's get our continuing ed credits. Let's actually not gripe that people don't know what they're doing. You can get any of our vendors will come in and teach a class on how to adjust prism poles and tribrax. Basic stuff that's, to me, is if your equipment's out of whack, your map could be pretty as hell, but it's just a shiny turd. And needless to say, we did it once 10 years ago, and then I've met resistance.
I do like that though. Like, and we've kind of talked about it a few times, but
Yeah.
And a few different things, but I like like you say, reaching out to the local vendors and having them come and do their spiel and kind of run through have them sit up in the parking lot, right? And
Yeah, I mean, just basic stuff.
Yep.
Peg testing, doing a peg test. I mean, just little things that people just don't do. Our Braintree office in Mass, I think the juniorest crew chief has 30 years in the field. They started doing a bunch of MassDOT work, and they truly lost their minds when they had to break out a level and do a level run because they haven't done one in 15 years. I'm like, you have a digital level. Well, we're going to use the auto level. Why won't you use your digital levels? Why make it more complicated? It's just little things that it's like the lost art.
Yeah. Okay, I got that one added, and I'll come up with some bullet points for that one as well.
Yeah.
I'll share this document with
Okay.
just a bunch of us that jumped on here. Cool. I love it. Rodney, you're quiet. You said you like these roundtables.
I do. I'm shameful that I showed up late to this one.
Oh, you're good. You're good. You've pretty much caught up. I'll send some notes. I'll send some notes afterwards.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, 'cause
what else can we hit on? We're at an hour. We're just about an hour right now. So,
Adrian,
our founder, yeah, go for it.
I dropped out, so I wasn't here. But before I dropped out, I know you had mentioned law. I feel like that's it's more advanced as you're later in your career, getting closer to licensure. You know more about the law, all the different types of things you need to do.
Agreed.
So I mean, for fundamentals, I'm not sure what would apply, you know, besides like safety stuff in the field.
yeah.
Well, I think you'd want some basic stuff to deal with things like encroachments and to understand, that someone, when someone needs to talk to the landowner about what they're finding, so that they're informed, or, if you're the new person, definitely knowing like what not to say, because if you don't have the authority to, decide what the landowner should be hearing, if your boss has to talk to them about what you found. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah.
Because if you're new, you don't want to commit to anything that you don't have authority to commit to.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the one out there saying, "Hey, by the way, I see your lawn is sticking into your neighbor's. You own that now. You don't want to make that kind of mistake."
Yeah.
Right.
That sounds like the Wisdom Wednesdays disclaimer.
Yes.
Go for it, Dave.
Yeah, I would say that the law is very much a fundamental, and I would say even a deeper dive, because everything you do is built on it. And one of the key things, like, for example, deeds are actually legal documents, but they actually follow contract law.
Yeah.
And so you have to have an understanding of contract law to understand deeds beyond the bearings and distances. And if you understand that, it'll make you a much better surveyor right away. And it's not so much every law you need to know, but how to read the law, because like you can cherry pick a sentence out of a paragraph to mean one thing. But for example, law is read as a whole. So you
Yes.
read each paragraph and you look at it as a whole. And if you understand that fundamentally, and you understand how the words work within themselves, you will be a vastly better surveyor than anybody could ever be. And so I think law is probably one of the key fundamentals. And what does the term shall mean in law? What does the term may mean? Being permissive or compelled. And understanding just the basics of what like they call the four corners. Where surveyors are mistrained and often make mistakes that cost them a lot in liability is that they read into intent, because you'll go into Brown's book and Brown says the intent of the parties is paramount, like the number one thing. And then you have your bearings and your distances and you have your monuments, your natural and artificial, and then you get down to your scenic rights. And so people say, well, this is what they meant to do. Well, that's a huge mistake. And it's because we weren't trained in how to read the law. And so I say this is top and foremost. The law is absolutely a deep dive to get your mind around how to read it and put it into context.
Yeah, I think when you're new, you can very quickly get to the point where you know enough to be dangerous and not know that you're missing big important concepts like that. So yeah, it's important
Yeah,
to get us
what,
in.
yeah, one of the challenges is it depends on your mentor, what their background is. If your mentor was staking freeways and you aspire to be that person, you're very ill-equipped to be in a courtroom, but your license allows you to, it doesn't distinguish it. And so I just think there's a lot. I was mentored very well personally. I had a lot of licensees, a lot of very good licensees, but I feel as though there was holes in my education that that fell through. Just people didn't understand those things, and they didn't explain them the same way. And again, it's back to that back room. You looked up to, you're the licensee, you're a mentor. Some people can't back up and say, I really have no idea, or I've been doing it wrong for 20 years. People don't do that.
Yeah, Rami just jumped off, but I've added under kind of determining property boundaries. I've added it starts with boundary law and then determining property boundaries, and I added contract law. I added equipment care as well. So we're up to technically 9. So what else should we add?
I think there should be some basic like diversity training.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't encountered a whole lot of problems, a couple of annoying things, bad habits that some older folks have, but nothing with that intent. But I know there's a lot of women surveyors out there who encounter just awful stuff, and so I know it's good for us to know how to handle that, but also for other people in the profession to have the tools to maybe deal with either coworkers who are a problem or clients who are a problem. How can you be a good ally, that kind of thing. But also everything extending to like recruiting. So if you feel like there's not enough people coming into the profession and you've been doing the same things all along and you keep getting like young white guys, no offense.
Yeah.
There's a bigger part of the population out there you could be recruiting from. So I think there's some good stuff out there that from a business point of view and from a management point of view that I think everyone could benefit from.
Okay. Yeah, no, and that was the whole premise for this, right? What's the current fundamental? So I have added that one. Dave and then Nolan. Go for it.
Yeah, one of the things about diversity training and ESG is it's kind of a current flavor, and who knows where it's going to go, and it has all these political overtones and everything. I think the way to teach that, because there's a place for it, is to tuck it up under the ethics and the law side of it, because people need to know what's ethical, and you could take EEOC. You could take the Civil Rights Act, and you could say things, and then okay, if you encounter a problem, what do you do? Let's say your organization is bad. Well, then you go to the Fair Employment and Housing, and here's how you file a claim. I think there's so much legal background there that would build in those protections, and the sexual harassment and the various things. And I think that goes right into labor law. Over time, you can't be salary if you don't supervise people. You can't be salary if you don't make at least $49,000 a year. You can't be an independent contractor under these situations. I think all of that provides protection for the employees, and it's perfectly affordable, but we don't get captured under the DEI, ESG world right now, and we give them some core how to protect yourself and how to act ethically. What do you think? I didn't catch your name, but the person suggested it. Do you think that would be a decent route?
I think that's a good start. I think it's like I said, there's a lot of business related things out there that are good to know. But also, like, you know, it's, I don't think of it as a trend, as something that's trendy, or however you put it. You know, I find it exciting that people are talking about it. You know, there's data and studies and everything to like back up, you know, the existence of the wage gap and how that affects, you know, the proportion of people in different professions. And like, there's actual studies and things that you can get into, you know, if you feel like it's just people talking about ideas. It's real true trends in our lives that we deal with every day, in work, in social areas, in all kinds of places. So it's, yeah, for me, it's exciting that there's so much more information out there that people can engage with, and, you know, presenters that you can learn from. And yeah, it's more than just the theoretical stuff. It's more than just the legal stuff. It's, you know, it's real concrete, you know, for a lot of.
I'm sorry, I actually believe you, because I am the proverbial old white guy. So I wouldn't know necessarily, because I come from a different generation. So if it's exciting and there's a place for it, I think it's great. I fully support it, because I just think there's a legal aspect in to complement what you like about it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And like, there's just for an example, there's a firm out here in Boston that is really making a lot of efforts to recruit women and to recruit minorities, and you know, recruit from, they're in Roxbury, so recruit from like locals in Roxbury, you know, which is I don't know for sure. I want to say it's a majority minority area, but it's, you know, and you hear the guy who owns the company just gets so frustrated. It's like, you know, we're trying, we're trying, they're just not coming. So like, there's you know, and I think they have, oh gosh, last time I talked to them, 8 or 9 women on staff out of 60 or 70 altogether. And not all surveyors, but, you know, other office staff and things too. But they have, like, when they have, you know, upper management meeting, they actually hire women consultants to come in and give them point of view, because they don't have women in those upper positions yet. So, like, they're making big efforts to do something different. And it's working, you know, if they're 10% where everybody else is running around 2% of non-white guys, you know, so there's more to it than just, yeah, how do we keep ourselves out of trouble? Or how do we not, you know, how do we make sure, like, okay, if a woman or another minority comes to apply for a job, that we give them a fair shake, you know? There's more to it than that.
Well, I can tell you from my own experience, the best way to recruit women is to have women on your staff. Like, a third of my technical staff, which are the surveyors, are women, and they work well with everybody. And I think when you have some others come in, you know, because they say, hey, this is a good job, or whatever it is. But a third of my technical staff is women, and maybe it's different in other places, but I go to the local college, Cal Poly Pomona, and the engineering students that I speak to, there's a lot of women within that group, but they're set up to become traffic engineers, is where they kind of lead, or planning. But I talk to them about surveying, and they very specifically talk to them about surveying. I very specifically talk to them about field surveying. because they get that experience. And all of my, that our staff are cross-trained, they're field and office. They're not designated one or the other, but they all spend as much time in the field as anybody else because they're just regular staff. So maybe I have a blind spot there.
Well, a lot of women will say that they have a hard time getting field work. You know, they want to progress to get their license, but they can't get the field work. You know, and it's, you know, this is going to vary all across the country in different areas and different kinds of firms. But yeah, it's an issue for a lot of people too.
Great discussion. Like there's a place for it, and I'm excited to hear things that I don't think about. like it's interesting to me.
Yeah,
Thank
and there's you know, there's things to learn on for everyone, you know, not just the guys. So you know, I think I attended the Women's Surveyor Summit that was online, and there was we'd had a workshop about how to give praise, and like the workshop was titled something like you know, having difficult conversations at work, and it was like, why is it difficult to give praise? You know, why does it fall like a lead balloon sometimes? You know, so it was an interesting thing. So there's you know, there's work to be done on all fronts, and sometimes it's the same, but sometimes not. Anyways, I wanted to get that out there as like a fundamental thing that you know, it's obviously not everybody has the problems with it, but a lot of people do. You're muted, Kent.
Yeah.
Kent.
I did. Funny, it came up on my screen. You're muted. I did add it to this Word doc that I have going. So yeah, Martina says great comments, Jen. So very cool.
Part
Well,
of the soft skills too, right? Did you guys
Absolutely.
write down soft skills like networking?
Yep.
Communicating, you know.
Yeah, I
so
got communication and collaborating with other professionals, but then I'll kind of do like a 6A and 6B, kind of like soft skill type stuff. So
For like when you're talking about like trying to draw students towards surveying, like talk to them about doing informational interviews with different kinds of surveyors. Because I did that. I talked to a dozen different firms, and it was amazing how different everybody is. You know, we're all so close to each other geographically, but just like work culture and the different types of work being done, and yeah, just so enlightening to do interviews with different people. So talk to them about how to set up informational interviews, how to find people to talk to. Yep.
yeah, I had that last week. I went to a career technical high school, and that was one of my, like, talk about the networking, the soft skills, right? I'm like, if you do anything in your career, it's network, right? The network's gonna take you farther than even some college education sometimes. Having that network of people you can rely on, you can ask those questions, that kind of stuff. So that was one of my ending conversations with them, was learn how to network. So
Hey Trey,
yeah.
what grade or level was it, this event that you're talking about?
The last one I just went to was basically it was 9 through 12, so it was high school.
Okay.
High school career tech.
Did they ask about on the job training?
Yeah, and I always bring that up because I'm always willing to let them job shadow all summer long. So
Okay.
I'll bring kids in all summer long. So especially here in the desert, it's good to have. I don't mind having 3 and 4 man. Thanks, Dave. I don't mind having 3 and 4 man crews to spread the work out and kind of, you know, we got those hot summers, so I'll let
Yeah, because I
bring them in.
Yeah, I went to an event and then I was there solo. So they were asking me all these questions and I was like, on the job training, well, like I'm not you know, no, I'm not a manager, so I don't know all the ins and outs of recruitment and all that stuff, you know, that what goes into it. And
Right.
stuff. So I was like, well, in our area, it's mostly like going to school because I'm in Central Valley, Fresno, California. So it's like going to school because there's a Fresno State geomatics program there. And that's like how most of the people get hired, is going to the program. In Southern California, they have, or is it Northern Cal? They have a 2-year program, Santa Rosa, and there's another one or two. So it was a good experience for me, you know, getting out there and figuring out, okay, these are like the questions that students are asking. Now I need to figure out a solution. I still haven't figured out the solutions for it, but at least now I have an understanding of if someone wants to get into what is it, like presenting to students, like what you're doing. And you're like, okay, now next time I do it, I have a better answer instead of like, oh, I'm not sure, you know.
Right.
Even though that's a good answer because you don't know, you want to be like, oh yeah, come on over, we have it all for you. Everybody's welcome. Anybody will get hired.
That's right. Call Steve. He'll let you in on the summer. Yeah, no, I when I do the high school kids, I just tell them about, I'll bring them on for summer interns, or I'll help them find a summer intern job. Because it's, you know, they don't know if they like the career until they get their hands dirty, right? And so I love having them come in for the summers.
So like you go to the Nevada chapter meetings, right?
I'm chapter president at the moment. Yep.
Okay, chapter president. So in your area, is there a lot of on-the-job training, or you're the only?
Yeah.
You're the only one, huh? You're the only one out there making changes.
Pretty much.
So that's like you know, that's the other issue, I guess, is getting other companies to embrace, like if they're really worried about the workforce, then they have to step up to this challenge, because it's not going to solve itself.
Right. Which we talked about. That's why I got 925, just because we've been making a big push the last few years of just bringing them from the ground up. So, and some of them have been through summer interns. I've had one is going to be a robotic engineer, and he's been interning with me since he was 14. He just graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, but the last 2 semesters he's been going to New Mexico State at night so he can get a survey degree. So we've convinced him to be a surveyor.
That's great.
So no, it's those where, you know, he scored 100 on the TrigStar presentation when he was 13 years old.
Oh, wow.
So he was a math genius. But he never, and the funny part is he never scored another 100 again, because he would always rush through it and he'd make a mistake at some point. So I was trying to beat his time faster and faster, because he did it in like 100% in like 19 minutes or something at 13 years old. So it's
that's crazy.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I got a bunch of good notes. I'll share it with just the group that was on here tonight, and we can kind of pick them apart and add and subtract what we need to, and see if we can make an actual working document out of it. That'll be kind of cool. But
what are you thinking for the next session?
I don't know.
As far as topic.
Yeah, I was going to take it from a poll from what we wanted to do here. If anybody has a topic that we could think about.
Lots to talk about.
Always. Nolan, what do you got? You got one? Oh, Rodney, what do you want to talk about next month? I'm in a hotel room in Abe Lincoln's hometown. Where
Yeah.
I'm in Springfield, Illinois tonight.
I almost went over there this week.
You should have. Damn it.
Yeah, one of my managers, he was supposed to go over, and he did last minute, decided he wasn't able to. He had a conflict on one of the days, so he's like, I'll just double up next year, because he's licensed in both states, a couple states. So yeah. So I said, well, I may go over one of those days just to sit in on some of the stuff that, you know, you and Tim were doing over there. So, but that's not gonna pan out right now. I got a hot project going on, so
we'll share the documents when we're done.
Appreciate it.
This sounds like a typical Rodney answer
Man,
to me.
I got 3 subcontracts I've been sitting on for like 3 months. I still haven't provided my guys.
Same old excuse. Got it.
As far as topics, I mean, I'm a huge advocate of anything with, servant leadership, those types of things.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is key. I mean, I do like the fundamentals. I think it's also good to have very specific topic to break down.
Mhm.
I always, guys I meet with every other month or so. I always tell them, I said, the best conversations we have are usually developed from telling a war story about something that went bad, or something that was very unique, that was very complicated. And I think those topics are awesome to gravitate around. And it doesn't have to be very specific at that point, but what's your worst lawsuit? I mean, I brought that up one time. I said, I'll tell you a story. And I told them, I said, this is what happened, but the result was completely something that was out of my control. They sued our company and blah, 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 whatever. I said, but, no matter how I thought it was a good idea, sharing information with a representative that worked for the owner of this development, he gave direction based on what I said. And then they turned around, they cleared, 40 extra acres of trees, and what was supposed to be protected and end up being, something that they had to replant 4 to 1. And next thing you know, you got hundreds of $1,000s of landscaping bills coming in because of a zoning variance that they granted that I had no knowledge of. So, stuff like that's just, it's invaluable.
Okay.
Stuff, anything really. I mean, I think you can really get into some good topics.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I do. I have the article I wrote on servant leadership, so we could probably start one on that conversation, but
Sure.
yeah, we did a roundtable conversation. I didn't moderate it at our conference, but we had one that was called War Stories, but those are always interesting for sure.
They're fun.
Yeah, exactly.
No one will have a bunch of them here in a couple of years. We'll have like decks and cards of war stories.
I already got them going, so we're good.
All right. Well, that was a good one. We still made it an hour and a half out of that. That's cool. Good conversation. I'll kind of put together this document that I was messing with, and I'll share it out, and we can pick it apart and over the next month or two and see if we can clean something up. So
awesome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Trent.
of course, guys.
Appreciate it. Good night.
See ya.
Okay. See ya.